All right. Well, I've had to restart this. There's nobody in here yet. So here's what happened, okay? Last week we did a video comparing the big block Chevy and the 426 Hemi. And it was on the basis of this was the premise of this whole thing, okay? At the top of the internal combustion mountain, you've got these two engines that have consistently stayed at the very top. They're the kings of internal combustion. So the 426 Hemi, you talk about top fuel dragster, right? The most powerful, the quickest and fastest accelerating vehicles on earth, the most powerful internal combustion engines on earth, infringed pound for pound. 12,000 horsepower nearly instantaneously. Okay, you cannot debate the 426 Hemi. The big block Chevy dominates the top rung of every other type of competition. It's the default high performance or default maximum engine. So we had the two of them next to each other. We had 426 Hemi and we had a big block Chevy. And we went back to their origin. We talked about how they were both designed at the same period of time in the 1950s. Their original versions were released in 1958, and then evolution took on from there. And I described the evolution of the engines to where they are today. I thought it was a good video. You guys thought it was a good video. I got a lot of thought, got a lot of comments. Everything was good. Yeah, because I made the mistake. And I went through the comments, and people like, what about the Fords? What about the Boss 429? What about the camera? And I'm like, I really don't want to do this, but I have to give the Fords equal time. So I did. It was I don't want to say it was a mistake. I think it was a good video, right? I think I treated all the engines fairly. But the comments, like, I've never seen such I can't even say it. They're like unhinged. They're like the comments. Some of them don't even have any bearing on the context of the video at all. It's like the Ford. You compare the Chrysler and the Mopar, and you get good debate and stuff like that. You get good conversation, and then you throw the Fords in, and it's like woo-wee, everything goes nuts. The context was completely lost. All right, so that's why I had to jump on here, because I was going through the comments and I'm like, my God, did these people even watch the video that they did? I swear to God, it was like there were hundreds of people who jumped in there, commented that I don't even believe actually looked at the video. It can only happen when you talk about Fords. And I was fair about the things. Let me just jump in here real quick and say hi to whoever we got here. Oh, God. Bill McKeisk is in the house. Nathan McCree, Thunderstruck 666. James Fife, go away. Hey. Thunderstrucker, Stan Marcus. Ford doesn't suck. I have Fubar's in the house. I actually like Fords. Listen, I tell you what, right? I owe a lot of the success I've had in my life. I owe directly to a Ford. And my Mustang. I made the car put food on my table. You know what I mean? I covered a lot of ground with that car. I don't want. I'm not going to brag. I don't want to brag about it. Okay, because that's not the point. But I mean, some of the best experiences I've ever had to do with Fords. Of course, on the flip side, as a mechanic, also Ford paid my bills, because like every other car you worked on was a Ford. There's like 100 different makes of cars, but every other one for the shop was a Ford. But that's all besides the point. Nathan Crackhead, you love the shirts. Yeah, we've got Mexican Crackhead. Well, right now our merch is suspended. We're not doing merch right now. We will get back to it. But listen, the 29 has to be the best motor. Yes, Lynn H. French onion, Ferds. Okay. I just needed to go through some of these comments, because I was actually thinking about making a video about it. And I said, no, I'm not going to make a video. I have to actually do this live. So I've never done this before. So I've got a couple of screens. So I'm going to try to go to the other screen so I can actually go through the comments. All right. Can you still see me? I don't even know if you can see me or not. I don't even know how to highlight these comments. Okay. Yes, you can see me. Virginia, don't forget how many Fords have hit crowds. I know. Yes, the Fox body. I have nothing but love for the Fox body. I have nothing but love for the Windsor. I mean, I literally, I love these things. But that's all besides the point. So now the context of this video was comparing two engines, it started out with the Hemi and the Chevy. And the idea was just to show the construction of the engines and the basis, the roots, right, the foundation that today's modern engines have evolved to, based on the 426 Hemi and the big block Chevy, right? So that was the context. So I tried to be as fair as possible. And I talked about the camera, an engine that I studied extensively, right? In the comments, people were like, Ed Pink. Yes, I talked with Ed Pink years ago about the camera. We talked at length about the camera. I studied the parts. You know what I'm saying? It's like I really got into it. So I got to know those engines. I talked to people who raced them. I found their failure points. I've been there, done like a t-shirt. And as far as the Boss 429 goes, I think it was more than fair with that engine because, yes, no, it didn't make it in drag racing, but it did do well in NASCAR. Yes, I know. And then, it did great in drag racing. It didn't do good on nitro. It did great in pro stock. And I talked about that. The Mountain Motor Pro Stockers. I talked about the combustion chamber. I talked about how everybody else followed that basic combustion chamber. And that's the foundation of the stoutest performance engines in the world that have used basically a Boss 429 combustion chamber. So I was more than fair to the thing. But let's go back to the let's go talk about these comments here. Okay, so I haven't even highlighted any of them. There are just so many. All I have to do is just scroll through. Okay. Okay, so I got this. Geesh, all this time I heard Ford absolutely dominated NASCAR in the 60s. Even Richard Petty had to switch over to Ford in 69. Yes, I know. This wasn't about Ford dominating NASCAR in the 60s. We talked about the tunnel port and how the tunnel port basically owned NASCAR in 68, in 66, 67, and 68. We talked about that. But what does that have to do with the engine's ultimate application? Right? In other words, it reached a dead end where you could not, when it comes to making power, it reached a dead end where you could go no further with it. I don't understand why people don't get that. Let's see. Jeremy Moreland. Overhead cams allow straight shot at the valves. No push rods to go around. I did a poor job at it. Warrior Alumni says, I did a poor job at that on that video. Listen, I talked about details that you search. Let me tell you something. You can search right now from here to the end of the internet, okay? And you will not find the information that I put in those videos, okay? As far as like the evolution of and why certain relationships happened within those engines, you will not find it any place else. So I did a poor job. Ford horsepower was bigger. This is Steve Hanna. What does that mean? What does Ford horsepower is bigger mean? Sure, this guy, sure, 5073 just says loser. Jesus. Okay, here's another one. New Jacks City. What about the 427 side oiler? All of the 427s we talked about, the camera and the tunnel port were both side oilers. Did I have to include that? I thought it was just a given. So here we go. Here's another one. Now remember, we're talking about engines that from the end of the rainbow, okay? Instantaneous 12,000 horsepower. Think about it, okay? This is the caliber of engine that we're talking about. And then you get this guy, CRVU1RT. Pontiac, Super Duty, 421, Super Duty, 455, and Ram Air 1 through 5 were the best built. I still want a Cleveland Ford. Yes, those are all great engines, but what does that have to do with the context of the video? Did you even watch the video? I got somebody over here trying to tell me how the Hemi style head burns slower, blah, blah, blah. This guy, Randy Boggs, he is just being silly, can't be serious. This guy, listen to this one. Listen, I'm just reading them as they go. I'm not, these aren't highlighted comments. I'm just randomly scrolling, okay? Glenn, 1035. Sad, really. He's on one of the stages of grief because he knows Chrysler is on life support and might be gone soon. Yes, I know it's the sorrow speaking. I get it. I know. Yes. Mike Collins. Now, okay. Now, I read through this comment, and this is Mike Collins 392. No, this isn't the comment that I read through. I'm sorry. 5-bolt head argument. Donovan, a 4-bolt design was in the mix in fuel racing until dual ignition in the late 1980s. For the factory-funded 426 Dodge, it was never about something like cylinder losing pressure due to lack of clamping force. That's bunk. The 426 style heads were larger in every way once spark was figured out to make use of it. The larger dimensions when a Donovan was done, not for lack of head bolts. Wrong, Mike Collins. Wrong, Mike Collins. The Donovan was finished. I'll tell you exactly when the Donovan was finished. Donovan was finished once they went past the 871 blower. Once you got to the 1200 pumps that were driven 30 over and 10 and then regular 1471 blowers, the Donovan was done. Okay, and it was the head bolts. And I very, very specifically remember because I was in nitro racing in the 80s. I was there. That's where I was learning. That's where I was cutting my teeth. I was part of that whole evolution. Okay. I was crew on the car that had the very first race pack computer on it. It was like Ray Alley's pet project. Okay, I was crew on that car, so I was there in the 1980s. The Donovan was already gone for at least 5 or 6 years by the time I got involved in like 1987. Right, Donovan was over, but I remember very, very specifically a fellow named Chuck Seiler, Syler. Okay, and he ran a Ford. His thing was, he was going to have this top fuel Ford. And this was in that era, 1987, 1988, 1989. And I very specifically remember him pushing head gaskets like every other run. The car was on fire constantly. It was always pushing head gaskets out. It was a Ford. That's what Fords are nitro do. They push head gaskets out. I got to keep going through these. This is Lord Samuel LJ. Mopar was king of leaving parts and oil over the drag strip. I'm guilty. I've left plenty of parts and oil. Drag strips will never rust as long as I'm around. Okay. Let's see. I'm pretty happy with my small block Ford. Faster than 90% of the. Yes, I know. I love small block Fords. But what does that have to do with this conversation? Hang on now. Hardcore Mopar fan tells you why Ford is bad for 30 minutes. Listen, I'm an engine fan, right? I'm a Mopar guy. I love Mopars. I am the first person to criticize them, okay? And I treated each of those motors fairly. The camera, the tunnel port, and the Boss 439. I treated them fairly. I approached them I approached this whole video, the comparison of the Chevy and the Hemi, and then adding the Fords. I approached them from a completely neutral standpoint, right? I only talked about their features, their construction features that allowed them to evolve to a point, right? So here's what happened, okay? The Chevy, the Ford, and the Mopar all start at the same time. Actually, they all did. 1958 was the year that all those engines hit the public, right? And two of them, the Chevy and the Chrysler, kept evolving to today. Okay, 70 years later, right? They kept evolving, and here they are today. the Ford engine stopped evolving. And I pointed out where they stopped evolving and why they stopped evolving. That's being unfair. Let's see here. This is great. There was some of them there. There's another guy talking about NASCAR races. They sure did win an awful lot of NASCAR races. Yes, but what does that have to do with the conversation? Did you even watch the videos? Let's see. So basically, Ford went full retard. Yes, they did. Wait, I got to get, there was a couple of them. Here, okay, here's another one, right? Isaiah 45:10. The camera was still banned. Whether or not some mystery motor was being produced, the buck stopped at high revving big blocks, pushing cars over 180, 200 miles an hour. Ford accomplished that? It was not a Mopar? No. The first full-bodied car over 200 miles an hour was a Mopar. I can't remember exactly. Was it Richard Brooks? I don't remember. It was definitely not a Ford. It was a Mopar. But that's besides the point. NASCAR did not ban the camera until the Chrysler was talked about. Once they talked about the Doomsday Hemi, and I'm going to do a video. There are two Hemi engines I'm going to do a video on, right? I don't even talk about them right now. But it was only once it was known that Chrysler was building the Doomsday Hemi, okay? Dual overhead cam, 4-valve cylinder, pent roof combustion chamber. That's when NASCAR says, no more exotic motors unless you can put 500 of them in street cars. And that's when it ended. Ford, listen to me, the camera was never actually banned. All NASCAR said was you have to put 500 of them in street cars. That's it. The camera was never banned. Okay? The camera was never banned. Just put 500 of them in street cars. Ford couldn't put 500 of them in street cars. They were too expensive to build. They weren't packaged correctly, and they would have been maintenance and warranty nightmares. So Ford said, no, that's it. This was going to be a racing engine. We're not going to put it on the street. Chrysler, on the other hand, said, sure, what the hell? And they compromised the motor enough to put it in street cars. And the street Hemi was born. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? Let me come back to you guys for a minute. I'm going to go back to the comments here. Big Black Ford dealership, old news, camera banned. Ford's 20 Super Cobra Jet was a good engine. Yes, kids teach. Yes, it was a good engine. But what does that have to do with the evolution of 1960s engines into 2025 today reality? What does that have to do with anything? Okay, wait. I gotta go back to these video comments. Here we go. Here's another one, right? And I wanted to go into this, but I decided that I wasn't going to go into this, but I will go into it. All right. This guy saying, Patrick Kennedy, thanks for the video. I'm a Ford cat, but I believe what you're saying is true. Didn't Ford run their own blocks when John Force ran for Ford? He goes, Mustang funny cars. Okay. This is something I got to talk about for a second, right? Because this actually did burn my ass as a Mopar guy, as a Nitro guy, okay? This burned my ass. All right. So in 2007, I think it is. Okay. So Force had he had a sponsor, he had a Ford sponsorship, okay? Mustang body funny car. So Ford, what they did was they concocted this public relations thing called the Boss 500. All right. So this was the claim now that the engine in John Force's funny car, or all of the Team Force cars, was a Ford, right? The Boss 500. Now, here's what they did. Okay. They made different valve covers. Right. They anodized parts of the engine blue. Okay. They took the main bearings, Chrysler main bearings, and they put them in the Ford catalog. Wait, I tell you what. You know what? I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves, because I can find this real quick. And I can read it to you word for word, and then you'll be like, okay, 500. Oh, come on. Oh, I gotta find this. Ford. Okay. Ford debuts Boss 500. Okay. So here's a picture of the engine. Does the magneto location look familiar? Have you ever seen that before? Yes, right? Okay. They're saying it's the first modern nitro engine for drag racing. Yeah, the block is anodized blue. Okay, most of the external surface areas on the new 500 cubic inch engine have been redesigned. A new belly pan was designed for better sealing. What is a belly pan? There's an oil pan. There's a diaper. What the hell is a freaking belly pan? Okay. And the valve covers purposely called back the old Boss Ford motors. The engine also features Ford main bearings with actual part numbers in the Ford Performance catalog. Okay, look, it was a scam. It was idiots fell for it, or not idiots, but people who just don't know any better were like, oh yeah, it's a Ford engine. No, it was 1,000% Mopar. They changed the valve covers. They anodized parts blue. They put Chrysler bearings in the Ford parts manual and called it a Ford motor. Okay, idiocy, and it's a kind of scam that. Oh God, I hate that shit. Okay, who's this here? Samuel Friedman. Hang on, Samuel Freeman. Okay, now, Samuel. Spartan cranks. This is Samuel Freeman. Spartan crank had two old John Force cranks. First off, we ran our Top Fuel dragster off of hand-me-down John Force parts, right? So the owner of the car I was partners with, right? We were partners. He actually owned the car, but we were partners in the team. Bobby Lagana. His niece, Lisa, was married to Austin Coyle, right? Austin Coyle was John Force crew chief. Austin Coyle would bring us care packages. Austin Coyle would bring us pistons and rods and cranks and everything else that after they couldn't use them anymore, but they ran just fine in our car. So we ran our car off of hand-me-down John Force parts. Like, so this isn't like, oh, I watched somebody do this or I heard about somebody doing this. No, me, I actually did this. Okay. So with that as a context, I'll answer you. I'll go to your comment here. Spartan crank had two old John Force cranks. Dude in Easley, South Carolina, bought them for his 426 Hemi build. Dropped crank or block off at the machine shop and found that Force cranks were for a 385 series. Absolutely no. You were lied to. So either somebody lied to you or you're a liar. But either way, no, absolutely not. Rocco says, I believe Tony had 2 Mexican Cokes tonight. Let's see. I'm a little worked up. Yeah, stuff like this gets me worked up. Ignorance gets me worked up. All right. I go out of my way to set records straight, to try to make things, because I love this stuff. I love the whole culture of it, right? So I go out of my way to like make things understandable, to set records straight, to explain history, to explain the evolution of these things, right? So I go out of my way to try to be fair and unbiased, honestly, right? I think you guys watch me for any amount of time, you know that. Yes, I love Mopars. I'm a Mopar guy, but I have an appreciation and have worked on everything you can imagine. So it's like, I do get worked up with stuff like this. End of time. A Ford 429 Thunderjet was a fun engine to me. Yes, lots of fun engines. But what does that have to do with the conversation? Comparing the engines from the big 3 and their evolution to today. What does that have to do with it? Rocco is saying, as evidenced by your love for the small block Chevy. I love the small block Chevy. I love the big block Chevy. There's a video on the small block Chevy I'm wanting to do, but I need to find reference material to do it, okay? Because this is from 1967, right? And I got to find the magazine that it was printed in, because I need the actual magazine to show the pictures, show the parts, and get the numbers straight. I have to get the numbers straight. So there is a small block Chevy video coming. That I think a lot of people are going to find very interesting. But I have to find that magazine. And I actually have it someplace. But I'm so disorganized. I've got things scattered to the wind. I can't put my fingers on it right now. Let's see. All right, let me go back to these comments here. Okay, here's another one. One of the few videos I disagree with you, but good info overall. Okay, it's fair. The 351 Cleveland cleaned up shop back in the day in NASCAR drag. I said, but what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with the comparison of the evolution of engines to their maximum form today that make thousands of horsepower? The 351 Cleveland is an awesome motor, but it does not make thousands of horsepower. You can't get 8,000 horsepower out of a 351 Cleveland. You can't get 12,000 horsepower out of a 351 Cleveland. So what does that have to do with the conversation? What about the Buick 330? Yes, Jared Clark. What about the Buick 430? What about it? Can you make thousands of horsepower with the Buick 430? Is it a viable engine in any form of racing today? No, it's not. It's a relic. The difference between the big block Chevy and the 426 Hemi and all of these other engines is that they are all relics, but the 426 Hemi and the big block Chevy are currently viable engines that are used exclusively in certain forms of racing because they are the ultimate forms of internal combustion engine. Does that make sense? Try new Kool-Aid with caffeine. Tony says I need a blood pressure pill. Buick 430 for the win. I love you guys. King Eric the Great. I heard there were 3 Cougar eliminators made with the Boss 429. There were 2. 2 Cougars made with the Boss 429, not 3. Now there might have been a hand-assembled car that you know, like a test mule, that sort of thing, but it wasn't sold to the public. There were 2 sold to the public. Danny Boyd, 430 ain't no relic when you drop it in a Skylark and drag Chevelles and Roadrunners' asses. Okay, great. Now take that 430, right, and pump 30 pounds of boost through it and go try to race and no prep kings with the thing. Okay, and tell me how you make out with that. God. Let me go. Let me keep going here. Let's see. Here's another one. Tony, the Hemi couldn't beat the 427 wedge. And when they had the camera outlawed, go home, you Mopar loving fool. Oh my God. And again, the Boss Ford in NASCAR. Yes, I know about the Boss, but that has nothing to do with it. NASCAR showed otherwise. We weren't talking about NASCAR. Phillipson, come on, man. The 427 single overhead cam was banned in NASCAR and NHRA. It was and never banned in NHRA. Where do you come up with this stuff? Because of GM and Chrysler whining, then the Boss 02 is blowing the big blocks out of the water. Same way as all the coyotes do today. Neither GM or Chrysler should even exist. They build garbage bankrupt companies, install taxpayer money to reward exactly as NASCAR, Chrysler teams that you're currently rooting for. Phillipson, I hope, please. Phillipson 5333, my brother, please don't reproduce. Please don't reproduce. Oh God. If he were alive and able, Bob Glidden would disagree some. Bob Glidden never raced cars at the level that we're talking about. Bob Glidden raced pro stock cars. Bob Glidden never ventured into like extreme, right? You see what I'm saying? Bob Glidden, yeah. Excellent racer. You can never argue with Bob Glidden, but he didn't he didn't take his racing program to the places that we're talking about now, where we're talking about thousands and thousands of horsepower, apples and oranges. We didn't the engines that we were talking about progressed beyond the horsepower levels that are available on gasoline and carburetors, like in pro stock, and went to the levels that are available through huge amounts of nitrous, nitromethane, huge amounts of very compressed alcohol, thousands of horsepower. So anything having to do with Bob Glidden, 351 Cleveland's, is a moot point. We're talking about way beyond that. Jimmy Ford, the Boss 351 was probably Ford's best engine. Hard to disagree with that, because I had experiences with a Boss 351 Mustang years ago, and I tell you, that thing was pretty amazing. But what does that have to do with this conversation? Watching all the dinosaurs argue about 60-year-old engine designs in the comments on both of these videos is almost as entertaining as the video itself. In modern times, a small block of any flavor will work for 99% of applications. Save the big blocks for the mega horsepower and exotic builds. But Cornelius, 1988, that's what we're talking about. Okay, I'm just gonna find one more. I gotta get off of here. Hang on now. I gotta find one more. Somebody's talking about Ford double overhead Hemi engines produced in 1940. Yeah, I know. Like military applications, I get it. Airplanes and tanks and the whole thing. They all built crazy shit, but that's not what we're talking about. Where were the Chevy and Chrysler engines when Bob Glidden was kicking their ass with a pro stock and Don Nicholson was? We're not talking about that. There's another one. What about John Force's Boss 500, right? Mr. Steve 4313. Well, this one. What is bro smoking? The T-Bolt Fairlane smoked anything Dodge could put out by a country mile. Get that Pentastar out your asshole, dog. Dude, The Thunderbolt was a great car, absolutely, and it dominated Superstock C, Superstock C, and Superstock C automatic. Okay, but what about all of the cars that ran in Superstock A, double A, B? Right? What about all of those cars? The many combinations that ran in classes faster than the one that the Thunderbolt dominated. Yes, the dominant. So I can't. More comments here. More comments. Motown XJ Dad. Your zany big block Chevy love is truly misguided. The true test of any American V8 is naturally aspirated horsepower and performance, and Ford has dominated in this area. Oh, really? I don't give a shit about nitro and boost. Top Fuel uses exactly zero Chrysler parts in them, other than Mopar stickers they put on. No, but the design, the layout is still true to the original 1958 350 and 361. The relationships within that engine are the same, completely recast. It's been refined. Yes, there are zero Chrysler parts in those engines, but the design, okay, if you strip down a modern Top Fuel car and you take a 1958 361 engine block and a modern Top Fuel Hemi, and you strip those blocks down to nothing, you'll see that the relationships are the same, okay, cast out of different materials, thicker, refined, but the relationships are the same. It would be an unmistakable match between those two engines. Well, how about this? Here's a simple way to do it. 1959 413, okay? Take a 1959 413 crankshaft. Take a modern Top Fuel Hemi. Take the crankshaft out of the modern Top Fuel Hemi. Take the crankshaft from the 413. Put it into the 426 Hemi, into the Top Fuel motor. Tighten it down. Start it up, okay? It won't be the right stroke, but everything else is there. All of the spacing, all of the dimensions are the same. You can take the wedge crank from 1959 and drop it into the 2025 Top Fuel Hemi. Let's see here. I think Mopar people must be all Democrats. Their willingness to be delusional is startling. The 427 had to run extra weight in NASCAR. I believe 400 pounds till it was out, banned. No. There was somebody who mentioned Le Mans. I'm going to find one more. Michael Gigolo, this is coming from someone who drives shopping trolleys with used rings and bearings. I'll keep my 351 Cleveland. Being a Ford guy is reason enough to be miserable. Bad engines, bad transmissions, bad electrical circuits, cheap trim, cheap plastic, exploding gas tanks, severe springs on the upper arm, shock towers, the list goes on and on. Those who disagree get help. That's an awesome comment. Norman Delivery? I can't even pronounce your name. NASCAR banned the Boss 429 again. When did NASCAR ban the Boss 429? Some people are just like literally like they've made up their own history. Like they. So Tony, how many Chrysler engines spanked Enzo Ferrari at Le Mans again? Not a single one. Because Chrysler with its limited resources, decided to focus on things that real Americans work with, participate in, or fans of. So they put their efforts in drag racing, American. Okay, they put their efforts in NASCAR, American. They put their efforts in street cars, hot street cars, American. Right? They didn't bother with stuff that happens in other countries that has zero, other cultures that has zero relevance to what happens in America with Americans doing American things. So I don't give a shit what happened at Le Mans or any of these other places. It's pointless. Oh, God. All right. I got to stop, guys. I got to stop. No more comments. Look, I'm even going to close this window so I cannot see any more comments. Okay. All right. And I'm going to get off here in about 5 minutes because Dr. Art goes on. It's Monday night, and I don't want to overlap his life. So Dr. Art goes on his channel, Dr. Art's Heart Rod Rehab, at 7 o'clock. So I'm just going to hang out for like a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to like pass it over to him. And if you're hanging out here for a minute, do me a favor, give this thing a like because the algorithms are really weird. The algorithms are punishing us for some reason. So if you can, just hit the freaking like button or hit the dislike button. It doesn't matter as long as there's reaction. I know it's crazy, right? But it's like good comments or bad comments, love me or hate me. It doesn't make any difference. As long as there's reaction, it helps the channel. So thank you. Hemi head, 6 see you later. All right, guys, am I wrong? I mean, seriously, we got a minute here too. If I'm off base, if I'm like twacked in another place, am I wrong? Let me know now. I'm almost saying people get so emotional. I get a little revved up. Thank you. Hitting the like button, dude. No 199. Stray Bullet is saying I had confirmation bias, but we still forgive him. I don't know about confirmation bias, bro. I was fair. Go back and watch those videos. I was fair. I pointed at each mechanical detail, right? And I outlined every relevant evolutionary step in all of those engines. So, Barrows, thank you for the super chat. Good live. I read my comments like that as well. I normally I kind of stay away from the comment section, but it's this one. I had to dive in. Electric car rants, yeah, maybe something's got to happen. Something's got to happen. Fuguslev. You're so wrong, but it has nothing to do with the facts you pointed out about these engines. Thank you. You hit a hornet's nest? Yes, I did. Have I ever seen the small block Chevy Hemi heads? Yes, I've seen many versions of small block Chevy Hemi heads. Hemi head, thank you for the super chat. Next week we'll talk about Eric is saying next week we'll talk about AMC engines. Paul Capizola, can of worms officially opened. All right, guys, it's 7 o'clock. Like I said, I'm gonna click off of here. If you want to hang out, go over to Dr. Art's channel, Dr. Art's Hot Rod Rehab. Guys, everybody contribute super chat. Thank you so much. Always appreciated. Never expected. Everybody contribute your presence and your conversation. Thank you equally. And homage. I saw Fubar's Mexican spec. Zero. I don't know if Zero was in the house or not, but guys, thank you so much. And maybe I drank too much coffee. I had like 2 cups before I came on, so maybe it was like too much coffee. Good night, all.